Hello and welcome to the Frame by Frame podcast. As you can see, this time we actually have video. Last time I forgot to make the switch, so our episode only recorded the audio.
We tricked you.
Yeah, surprise. Was it April? Was it April 1st? That would have been perfect.
That would have been funny. It was not.
So today we're actually going to be discussing a little bit about UX UI relationships with their developers. It's a very important subject I feel like we should be covering because I know I've mentioned it many times on our show that I'm constantly talking to my developers. Like I think I talk to them more than most anybody else in my company. So communication is a big win as a designer if you can communicate with your developers, and that goes beyond just verbal communication. It's trying to anticipate what they might need as well, because they are a user of your design. Like especially if you're using a design system, like they have to know why they're using things, what they are, where they go. Like be very descriptive. So it's good to have I don't want to say like a checklist of handoff items, but it is good to keep A, handoff items in mind, but B, make sure like you're trying to anticipate what they're going to need from you and be aware of what they're working on. For me, that's huge with communication, is knowing what's involved in all the sprints each week so that I can anticipate like, okay, there could be a chance that they need this, this, and this. We're going to set that aside and let that just chill. And if they don't need it, then we have it for later, or at least they'll know where to find it. So yeah, I don't know. I know you do the Bubble IO stuff, so I'm not sure how involved you have to be with a developer, but I'm pretty sure you probably.
It's so weird because I am both designer and developer. I can design something, pass it by my boss, see if it's cool. He says yes. I just say okay, I'm gonna go build it. And that's that. I don't have to do much of a dev handoff. However, I do not touch the Chrome extension that we have. That is, someone else does that entirely. And my second big project with Prentice, I was put in charge of the updates to the Chrome extension and the dev handoff document. And at first, I thought it was going great. And then I reached to the end and I realized, like, oh, I am so intertwined with one user type. I have 3 users or like 4 user types.
Yeah.
So then I had to go back through and update everything with like, oh, if user plan equals this, it's going to react differently, and then draw up the new screens. And then just have that for like 4 different user types. It was not good because I made that big mistake.
Do you think in a boot camp they touch on that enough? Like as far as designer developer relationships, or anything remotely close to this? Because in my experience, you're only taught handoff material. Like this is what you should have.
Yeah.
And for me, my developers know Figma pretty well. Like they can get around and get what they need as long as they know where it is. So our Figma is very much so put together that way. Like it's a huge file. It's massive. But they know where everything is, and it's pretty much its own library at that point. They can go in and find descriptions in there. Like I house our entire design system in Figma, and then I back it up with solid documentation in Confluence. So I have them like interconnected, and then you can also get to any of our like documentation stuff inside of our Confluence as well. But you would think it limits questions and having to communicate, but it actually increases the amount of questions you end up with. And it's not always like they didn't have that information. Sometimes there's really weird specifications or things that they're trying to find out, and it's like, did I not include that? And they're like, well, I just really need to make sure before I go and put the time in. It's like, all right, yeah. So
yeah,
but
right.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but with handoff, I'm not freelance. Like I'm not doing it freelance at the moment. So it's like,
right.
Why would I ready a huge folder with a bunch of huge files in it, or graphics or anything else they need? Like they have access to it. So
Yeah. And the developer I work with to do the Chrome extension, he understands Figma, so I don't have to export anything.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the preparation from boot camps, I do only remember handoff stuff. But I think the devs, of course, need to be involved like at the beginning. So
Oh, absolutely.
now a UX designer might not be involved in this conversation, but when maybe the product designer or the higher ups are talking about adding a new feature, of course, engineering needs to be brought in those initial talks just to understand.
It's a really good way to. I'm a very head in the clouds person as far as like ideas, and I have notebooks just full of scribbles that I probably 10 years from now I could go back and be like, wow, that was a good idea, and I never did anything with it. But developers, I've noticed, if you have them in the brainstorming situation, they're going to be the first people to really think about it and let you know if it's possible. And most of them, from my experience, will tell you everything's possible. It's just how much of a pain in the ass is it going to be for me. So it's
the technical debt, right?
Absolutely. And so it's very important that they're in the beginning, and I think that's your first big step in communication with a developer, is the actual design period. It's like, okay, I know I've had many phone calls with my lead developer where I call him and I'm like, so here's this idea. And he's like, well, do you have examples of them? I'm like, no, it's in my head. I'm not going to spend the time if it's not possible. And he's like, well, it's possible, but, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the idea. And he's like, let me stop you right there. We can do something like this a lot easier. And usually you work out something that's time feasible. Like it's not going to take forever. Because that's actually important in a startup, is you get it to market, you know?
Yeah. The biggest roadblocks I've found in my task of switching between design stuff and then implementation stuff is that I might be working on a feature where I have to introduce a whole new attribute on a data type.
And then,
And for people who are unfamiliar, it's like maybe if I have a fruit data type in my app, that fruit gets a color, it gets a price, it gets a list of vitamins or nutrients, stuff like that. If I'm working on a feature where I have to add a new attribute on a data type, that can be a nightmare because I might have a million data points. So for example, if Facebook wanted to roll out a new feature that's literally like hair color, and for some reason they don't have an AI image scraper where they can figure out your hair color. Like if they wanted to do that, they would have to update literally every user's data point to introduce a whole new attribute. And so that's a nightmare. And I realized that the attribute I wanted to introduce for a feature I was working on recently, it did require adding a new attribute, and it required me updating about 200K data points.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, thank you.
Which took a long time. And so it's that sort of stuff, like either creating a new data type or adding a new attribute. And that, those two items, and sorting things properly. That has been one of my biggest roadblocks as well, because I'll get a stakeholder who might want to be able to filter their data a certain way, but I might only be able to do it almost that way. I might be able to make almost that filter, but not exactly. So I constantly have to be wearing my my developer brain as I have those conversations. And if I was two separate people, I would need to be going back and forth between the stakeholder and the dev constantly.
Exactly.
And so it's just better to have, like, I don't know, a meeting every week or every other week just to make sure everyone's on page, something like that.
Yeah, currently in my company, our design department does our own weekly meeting every Monday, and we usually do it just after like a weekly stand-up. Like it's our weekly meeting where everybody goes over what's been done, here's our goals, here's what this week needs to entail, and here's a look at the coming week after. So it's kind of like, this is why the target is what it is, here's where we're going in the next 2 weeks. And then when you get into my position, I'm talking to our dev regularly, and it's like, okay, where are we going to be in 3 months from now, and what's the roadmap that we can make, so we have like a general idea of how to run our sprints and run our plans. And even being organized, sometimes things get a little hairy, and it's like, okay, so we're not going to hit that because this happened and now we have. But if you're not, yeah, again, if you're not paying attention to what's going on or you're not communicating well, you're always going to be behind. You'll never be ahead. You'll never have the things, like I said, set aside, so it saves you some time. But at the moment, my UI designer, she's super super sweet. She's really good. I'm glad I got her working for us because she's well aware that I have a very like, if you looked at my sticky note wall here, it's crazy, and my brain kind of operates the same way during a work day because I'm hit from all sides with different stuff like stakeholders, and then you have the devs, and then you have other design department workers, and then you have oh man, I'm talking to investors, and there's a million things that come up throughout my day, and so that's usually how our conversations go. But no, she's super helpful, and right now I think we're 4 weeks ahead in what we're supposed to be designing. And
That's awesome.
yeah, they gave us like a timeline on it. And I was like, well, I jumped the gun and I had already kind of started floating ideas through Figma here and there. So I'll just collect all my thoughts and put them into one page. And then I brought her into my idea room in Figma. And I was like, so this is kind of what's in my brain. I don't have anything really designed. It's all high fidelity wireframes at this point because we have our design system, so I can just drag and drop it. I'm like, so here's a rough piece of it, and she basically just listens to the idea and goes, okay, I can do this or this might work better, and then we hash it out, and then immediately I'll go to dev afterwards and be like, so here's what we talked about, here's what I have, is this possible, is this gonna happen? And then our devs are lovely people, super nice, and they're always very understanding, and I try to do the same. I try to be like, okay, you don't like using drawers and drop downs because they're a pain in the ass with the we're using Flutter right now.
Okay.
And so for Flutter, it's some of the things aren't pretty. Like I don't want to call it buggy, but like you pull a drop down and it, for whatever reason with the screen resolution, it shows up a little bit off, and then it just doesn't look good. And that's actually important to know, but you wouldn't know that if you don't ask a developer. And so they're like, well, if we could, we just avoid doing that, so I don't have to try to like debug it every time somebody complains about it. And so we just saved them the trouble, and I got rid of all our drop downs in our entire app, even in our web app. And so the code stays the same, which is another thing. Talk to your developers about code snippets, because I'm slowly accumulating a library of code snippets for everything we have. That way, again, I'm hoping that there's less questions over time, but there's always questions.
Yep.
The running joke between my mobile developer and myself is that we talk so frequently, it's weird when we don't talk. And so she was on vacation for like a week, and then the day she came back, I had like a flood of comments and questions, and she was like, did you miss me? And I'm like, yeah, it was actually really quiet around here, and I got so much done I didn't know what to do. So
gonna make her feel better.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I do the same thing to her. Like, I'll, again, with my lead developer and her, I bring them both just weird ideas sometimes where I'm like, this could work and it'd be kind of fun, and let's see if it's possible. And then I ask them a hypothetical question, and they have to get their brain off the task they're working on, listen to my spiel about this idea, and then, but at least they know where I'm going with it, because sometimes one of the ideas changed 80% of the buttons in our application. But it was a great idea, and when I brought it up, that's how I found out that it could work, and it worked better than what we had designed. And and then I talked to my accomplice and we switched out some buttons and made some adjustments, and then so we're running with that now. But stuff like that, you wouldn't, it's harder to design something 3 times if you can't get it right. And if you're not talking to your developers, you might do 3 redesigns and hand it to them, and they're like, that, no, now you're doing it a 4th time, so it's just, you got to make sure you're always trying to tick the boxes and be a little understanding.
I
think sometimes it's Yeah, I try to do that. There's things with the designs. It's that running meme where they're like, what the design looked like in Figma, and it shows
Yep.
like this beautiful castle, and then it's like, and what it looked like in development, and it's like a cardboard box castle outside. Um, and there are times that that happens, but as a designer, like I have experience coding with HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. That's it. And these guys,
Mhm.
they can do things faster than I can dream about in code. Like to make an email template, it took me a day and a half or something to make the HTML with the CSS.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
so you just try to be understanding where it's like, okay, so that's like, it's like making paper mache. Like they laid down the framework to put the paste on, and now they're gonna clean it
Mhm.
up and everything will be good. But it's also back end developers. I think we don't talk about them very often, but without them, your data would be everywhere for free.
Mhm.
And they're also the people that uh, put the spaces for all these puzzle pieces to go. Like front end,
Mhm.
they do. It's very much like UX UI. You have back end. They're still a developer. They do the stuff, but they're
Mhm.
worried about security. They're worried about where these endpoints for all the things in your program are going to line up and how they interact with each other and if it can handle
Right. Yeah.
callbacks and traffic and everything. And it's like those guys do a lot of work, and they're kind of the unsung hero, I think, of a software or an application because
Mhm.
it's a lot. Like it's really a lot, and it's a lot to think about. And
Mhm. Yeah. It's wild. I had a situation earlier today I was working on. I'm trying to create a new report so that our admin user type can generate this new report and show it to their stakeholders, make sure they're getting use out of our
oh,
platform.
perfect.
But it generates really fast if you have few data points.
But when you start to get up there,
But when you have 5,000, it just timed out on me.
oh
So
yeah, well,
gotta figure out something around that. I don't know if that's a symptom of being on Bubble and using their servers. That's probably what it
it
is.
could
I
be.
do have someone who's
They're
working
totally
on.
cloud based, right?
I think so. We are working on getting off of Bubble and into our own servers. So once that finishes, that'll be a big thing. But the we sell to some schools and universities, and as we grow as a company, we'll attract larger and larger schools. So at this point, I think our largest schools are somewhere around a couple thousand, like concurrent students, but we're aiming for like a couple dozen concurrent students. And so if any of these people end up signing like today and they want to use this report
You might
tomorrow,
be in
it's
trouble.
not going to be
Yeah.
pretty. So the back end stuff really needs to be there. And I don't know back end stuff at all, which is why
That's
the boss got a more back end centric person to come in and take a look at what we're doing.
yeah. I mean, it's again. I would say I'm not even scraping the surface as far as knowledge about back end development, but that's also one reason I'm not afraid to talk to my back end developer. He's cool. I really
Mm,
like talking to him. I love asking him questions because we're both into AI. We both really like the potential it
mm,
has. I myself, from an arts and design aspect, the possibilities are great. Uh,
mm,
and we've shared some ideas back and forth that we have, like is it not necessarily just AI, but like augmented reality and stuff like that. And so
mm.
they're great. They're good for knowledge, and I think a lot of people listening to our show, like those are the people you pick their brain. Like just go talk to them, just ask them any
Mm,
question you
absolutely.
want because they know this isn't your job. Like you are not a backend developer. So to them, it might be a really stupid question, but they're probably really happy you're asking because the next time you're talking to them, you might not have that same question. It might never
Yeah.
come up again. Or at
And
least
also
you
because
have,
they know no one at home is going to answer
yeah.
ask them.
And it's like, I can ask my backend developer now questions about what's happening in our software, things on the back end that I didn't know before, and
Hmm.
now I have more understanding. So the next time I have a question about it, I at least know further where to poke and prod for the answer instead of being general, like, hey, why isn't this working? And do you know how long that will take? And like, what, and he's like, well, this
Hmm.
piece is actually a piece to this. And without this, it doesn't. in the end, it's just helpful to know, like, later, okay, I don't have to ask them about these two pieces, but I know they're connected to this. Okay, here's where I'm going to start
Mhm.
questioning you now. So
Mhm.
again, communication is, as a designer, that should be your main focus as part of your workflow.
Mhm.
Like, it's great that you're a designer. It's great that you can come up with ideas. Just make sure they can work, and make sure the people around you um, know what you're thinking, so they can best take that idea and try to make it happen. We'll say try, because
Right.
it's not always a guarantee, but
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention for communication is mostly, or at least for devs, is mostly being patient for a specific reason. So of course it takes time to build anything, but also sometimes you're building a feature where you're not going to end up coding it natively in the app. Sometimes you bring in another piece of software from a different company.
third party
So
software is always fun. Yep.
exactly, third party software. So if you're in a no code app builder, it's probably taking the form of plugins. For example, I'm working on something now where I need a plugin, and it's definitely not something I could ever create in within a year. I would need a crazy amount of experience. So I needed to get a plugin, and I needed to browse all the different available plugins to do the one thing I'm trying to do. Figure out which one is the best without actually being able to test them all, because a lot of them are paid and you can't pre-download and test before you pay. And then once you find one you like, chances are you got to pay for it. So then you submit some sort of request to your higher ups to see if it's okay to buy it. And that request could take any amount of time. So
I've had requests get lost because the person responsible was on vacation. So you're like, hey, did you
mm-hmm.
get that request I needed for this plugin like 2 weeks ago? And they're like, no. And I'm like, yeah, it's because you were on vacation. So it probably just disappeared under the mountain of emails you weren't answering, because that's just how that works. But
Yep.
no, it's do you find plugins are easier to work with maybe than
At
code?
first, no.
I mean,
At first, no.
they're not easy to work with.
Um, it's more like I had taught myself how to use Bubble, and like I understand a lot of what Bubble has to offer, not everything. And then plugins, all of a sudden, I have more options that I can choose from in all of my drop downs for everything. But you don't automatically know what any of these options do. You have to go in and test all of them, or go into their plugin documents and read deep to try to figure out exactly what each item does.
Okay.
And so for me, diving into an app where everything was already built, there were already dozens of plugins. I was like, "Yep, I'm not learning any of these. Not doing it. I'm just doing what I have to do to get my immediate job done." But then I had to work with a plugin last week, and I finally understand how to do it now. But a lot of them will require you to pay a subscription or pay up front, get an API key, or get some
Just to
other
use it, yeah.
key or ID just to use it. And the fact that I don't have our billing information made a lot of that rough, or I don't have
Slows
the
it down.
official, yeah, or like I don't have the official Prentice email or stuff like that. That sort of stuff would slow it down. But I am now finally diving into JavaScript a bit more, so I can understand that stuff more in depth, which is spooky, but it's what I got to do.
You didn't want to be in that uh, avenue of design or product design.
No. But I'm glad I'm doing it, because now I'll be able to understand devs, I guess, and their work more intimately in future roles.
Yeah, and I think again, I'm not an experienced front end developer or anything, but I do dabble with Swift coding. I
Okay.
I don't publish any apps, but I'll make things as close as I can to an idea I have, just to test it out. So someday, if I find one I really like, maybe it'll end up in the App Store. I don't know, but
That's fun.
do I ever use Swift? No, just for myself. Would I say I'm like super adept with it? No, not at all. But I can fumble around for 2 months and come up with something close to what was in my head.
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's just knowing that stuff makes it easier to ask the questions I need to ask, or at least understand the information that's being given to me by developers sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think for new designers, it's a little intimidating, really, if you're dealing with any sort of developer, because you are going to hear things you don't understand, and there's going to be a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
happening that
Yep.
are over your head as far as coding, or even just software in general, or how things work. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to hear things and be like, I don't know what that is, because most likely your developer wants you to know what it is so that you have a clear understanding of what's going on. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
going to happily, answer you. They're not going to scoff at you and be like, look at this asshole, he doesn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how that works. You're all on the same team. But
Mm-hmm.
no, I always try to tell people, like, don't go into coding if that's not what you want to do. But if you're getting into
Mm-hmm.
product design or anything digital, you should probably, like, at least take an HTML course, like through Free Code Camp or something. Like anything online, just do
Yeah.
like a quick, 10, what was the Free Code Camp's first one? I think it was like 10 or 20 like short lessons, like the basics of
Mm-hmm.
HTML. Um and so that will definitely at least let you understand part of their job, because I know a few of my
Yeah.
developers, they always tell me, they're like, I'm not a designer, that's not my thing. And it's like, no, but like, I'm asking your opinion because you probably do have one. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's a design question, but I'm asking you personally, how do you feel about it? Because I just want to know. It's
Mm-hmm.
another tally to put on my sheet of feedback that I can get from somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if I feel like if it's part of my team and you're part of developing that product, your say carries more weight as far as your personal attachment to this product. So if you
Mm-hmm.
see a color that you suggested because I asked you and we put that color in because it worked and everybody agreed on it, that's like a a ticket in your pocket. It's like, oh man, look at, I
Mm-hmm.
actually like made some visual contribution outside of code to this thing. So
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
actually use a green in our app for uh, like file completion. So when a file is completed, and we called it like
Okay.
poison green. It's just a really weird green color, but it was a
Uh-huh.
suggestion from our lead developer. I was like, so if you had to choose a color that goes with this, and he's like, well, I'm not really sure, but this is a color I would pick anyway. And then when he told me
Mm-hmm.
the color, and I like went on oh god, what is that? They're based in
Whatever
Michigan.
that website
No, I
is.
can't. Yeah, I can't remember the
Oh.
company's name. They're based in Michigan. Pantone.
Oh. Oh. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went on
Mm-hmm.
Pantone and I looked up color names, and they have 10 billion hex colors, and it's like,
Yep.
okay. So then I did a
Mm-hmm.
Google search and I looked on there and I found a really similar color, and then I showed him and he was like, that's exactly like what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, good. And then I looked up the Pantone hex and put it in our Figma, and then we were going through a demo at one point. He's like, wow, that's a great green. I'm like, that's the poison green that I asked you about. He's like, oh, cool. So it's just fun to put
That's
stuff
nice.
like that. Like my dog lives in our software. She's part of the news section. Like when there's I'll call it a 404 error. It's not a 404, but when something goes wrong in
Mm-hmm.
the news and it can't refresh the news feed, my dog shows
Mm-hmm.
up as a vector image, and then
Mm-hmm.
she's got like a hole with a newspaper sticking out of it. Like we couldn't find it. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so for me, it's fun
That's
to
fun.
do stuff for people I work with, and myself. Like it's something I devote most of my day to. So why not hide little
Mm-hmm.
snippets? Like I think I used my kids' names in one of our prototypes or something at one point too, because
Yeah.
you got to come up with personas here and there. And even though we have personas, you need
Mm-hmm.
filler characters in the play. That's not all
Yeah.
leads. So I always use either names I know or I make stuff up. But yeah.
I love it. Um, I know we are coming up on time for the in-frame episode here. What are some last items you think every designer should be generally familiar with? when it comes to devs to be able to have a conversation with dev?
Um, that's hard. I've met sometimes they're awkward. No offense to any devs listening, but sometimes devs are awkward people. You guys deal with code all day, and yeah, I don't blame you. No, it's with your devs, just be direct about exactly what you're talking about, because that's their job, is to be direct. Like, it's code. They can't kind of
Mm-hmm.
like code in here and there what they want. They have to tell the computer what they're doing. And so you should do the same with them. Like, ask them a direct question,
Mm-hmm.
try to get the feedback. If you don't know something, just ask. That's,
Mm-hmm.
make good friends with them too,
Yeah.
because actually if the devs are on your side, you have somebody pulling for you with any decisions that are made. So even if a stakeholder
Mm-hmm.
really wants to fight it, dev is always there as like that little nudge in the back that's like, well, he is right. Like, we should maybe go that route. And they usually have a better reason than you do. Like, oh, well, the user
Mm-hmm.
said, the devs can be like, well, the cost of this to code it, or the possibility, or the timeline, like, they hit the business in a different aspect as well, like when they have suggestions.
Totally.
So they're
Mm-hmm.
a good teammate to keep on your side. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the way. What I would suggest is just make sure you're friendly with them, give them what they want, try to anticipate what they might need, and ask them a billion questions.
For me, there are actually a lot of books out there that will even tell you, like, yeah, bring your devs along when you do research, if you do interviews. Not all of them, not every interview, but sometimes. They can pick out some really interesting insights that you might not get because they're coming at it from a totally different direction. That is not that's not something I've been able to do yet. However, I am doing both jobs, so I guess technically I am able to do that right now, but whatever. Um, for me, I think the easiest things for the designer to grasp to make conversations with dev easier are understanding what a data type is and attributes on those data types. This is super helpful because maybe you are tracking something very interesting with your users and you need to know how to display their status or sort their status by different things. You need to know what filters to be able to include in all of your sort and filter menus, stuff like that. You should be familiar with an if statement. Whenever you have a bunch of nested if statements, you need to be able to communicate that incredibly clearly. Like, if this condition is hit, this condition is not hit, and this third condition is hit, like, you need to be able to communicate that stuff crystal clear. Otherwise, the devs are just going to ask, like, hey, can you repeat that like 4 different times until you finally give them all of the states that they're looking for, because you might miss a state here or there.
It happens.
So
I didn't even think about that. That's really good. That's why our design system will forever live in Figma, because in all the descriptions, I've built in buttons in Figma that will take devs to like a breakdown of a certain action. Like,
that's
if
perfect.
you hit this, this happens, and if this is not clicked, then this, like the whole thing is laid out for them to see the different stages of how an action takes place, or what causes what to happen. It's time consuming. It's not something I would recommend. Like, if you're, a junior working at a startup, don't dump all your time into doing that. Just know you will have to explain it. So prepare yourself to use an if statement, and prepare yourself that if something is agreed upon, if something's agreed upon, then make sure you document it right away for your devs, not just for the company or yourself, but make sure it's anytime that we built our whole design system, and I basically modeled this whole thing so that it's more a benefit to my devs than anybody else. Designers have drag and drop options. They know where to find everything. Everything's labeled. But as far as the devs go, like, there's code snippets. There's basically a key that tells them, based on this symbol, what things are for and what things will do. And everything looks like it's a schematics map. Like, I went crazy with the arrow tool in Figma, and everything is mapped out. Like, every if statement, if it's nested, shows exactly what goes where. It's almost like when you build a map to aliases for color usage in a design system, you start with the
Okay,
hex
yeah.
code and then you start like, okay, but this is now blue, but that blue is called this name, and now this name is on a surface
Mhm.
of a button with whatever text. So that's basically how it's laid out for them. It's like this button exists here, and when it's clicked, if it's clicked with this selection and let's say a filter screen, this should show. Yeah, so it takes time. Don't waste your time, but make sure you're
Absolutely.
going to explain it to them. Um, and
Mhm.
the pretty map stuff comes later after it's already been explained to them. It's just nice
Mhm.
for
And if you have a wild amount of time.
yeah, exactly. No, it's for me it's more for onboarding. Like if I have a new dev come
Mm.
in, I want to help my lead dev because he's a great guy, love that guy, and I want to make his life easier, and I want to make the new hire's life as productive as possible in our company. So if they give them
Mhm.
something to do or something to look through and get informed on, it's good to have that in your design system where it's like, okay, you can understand everything you need to know just by following the breadcrumbs. Like here's first
Mhm.
page, just keep going. When you get to the end, start the second page.
Mhm.
But But I think we are a little over time. So if you have anything else, then good.
I think we got pretty much everything. I'm excited to have an actual dev on an episode one day to talk to us, to help us get
You can
better,
get us a couple if you
to
want.
help us learn about their job.
I could pull a couple devs
Um,
for us.
yeah, I'd be excited for that one day.
Yeah, other than that, I will say good night to everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on when you're listening to this. Once again, middle of the week, we will be having part of our new series, which is the Out of Frame podcast. It's for all our rants, raves, and ramblings that we go through during our normal shows. We'll take ideas and bring them into the next show. So
Mhm.
yeah, feel free to have a listen. It's probably a little less design oriented sometimes. We covered Helldivers last time, which I
Mhm.
don't know how much you've played since then, but a lot's
I
happened.
leveled up at least 3 times.
A lot has happened.
Mhm.
But yeah, so good. Then we will say good night and thanks for listening to the Frame by Frame podcast.